911 calls, cockpit recordings, and scanner chatter present some of the toughest decisions for newsrooms. Airing someone's final words can be gratuitously insensitive, but can also provide crucial context to an emergency. That's a decision Boston news stations had to make this week after the Back Bay fire. A note of caution here, some audiences may find this material upsetting. Wednesday's fire in the Back Bay, which claimed the lives of Michael Kennedy and Ed Walsh, provided vivid illustration of the dangers facing firefighters. And when audio of the fire department's radio transmissions became available, it added context that images alone couldn't. How firefighters struggled with an unexpectedly fierce blaze.
And we get a sense of that from some of the emergency radio transmissions that took place as firefighters were showing up to the scene. Have a listen.
Most outlets broadcast audio clips of dispatchers trying to convey the sense of urgency.
Engine 33 has a mayday on channel 2 in the basement. They say they don't have any water and it's getting hot in there.
And commanders making the gut-wrenching decision to pull out.
I want all members out of the building. All members out of the building immediately.
But notably absent from those reports were the voices of the doomed firefighters themselves. Few outlets made the decision to air those portions. One was WEEI, which paid tribute with an audio montage including one of the last transmissions from Walsh and Kennedy, a plea for more water.
All companies get out of the building. All companies get out of the building. I'm running out of water. I'm running out of water.
WCVB also aired that same clip, as did WGBH's Boston Public Radio, with host Jim Braude explaining why.
You know what's most amazing about that to me is his focus was on his job in that radio recording we just heard.
True, but it's still very tough audio to hear in a city mourning two fallen firefighters. So was playing scanner audio of Walsh and Kennedy the right call? Here to hash it out, author and journalist Roy Harris, Adam Riley of WGBH News, Callie Crossley, also of WGBH News, and Dan Kennedy from Northeastern University. Was it the right call? It was a difficult call for us to make here in the newsroom.
I don't think it was that difficult a call. I think that whenever a news organization is going to use audio like this, there's some important considerations that have to go into this. A lot of times what you get is people speculating about something that may or may not happen. That's a bad thing to put on the air. And I think if you had any civilians who were in fear of their lives, for instance, you wouldn't want to put that on the air. But here you have two firefighters acting heroically in the final moments of their lives, and as Jim Braude noted, still trying to do their job. I think it's important to put that on. This has been an enormous news story of great public importance. I think it drives home the heroism and the service that they were engaging in at the time of their death.
As Jim Braude said, it illustrated the horror of the moment and the strength of the firefighters at the scene.
Yeah, I think Dan touched on something really crucial there toward the end. I think that a lot of the coverage we get after an incident like this is not about explanation as much as it is about emotion and sort of paying tribute to these people who have died. And, you know, I think that applies to tales of what good guys both of these firefighters apparently were, the good works they've done for others, you know, what sort of family men one of them was. And I think that really the decision to play this audio fits squarely with that, because it, on the one hand, we're trying to convey to the fullest possible extent how they were as human beings, and then on the other hand, the horror of their death. So this is, I think, of a piece with the, I don't know if backdraft is the correct term technically, but that image we saw in our video just now, you know, this spume of fire shooting out twice from this building in the Back Bay, I think this goes right hand in hand with that.
But do you draw a line between the dispatcher's audio and the voices of the firefighters when they're speaking their final words?
I mean, I don't think so, again, because I think this fits squarely with all the other things that we've heard about them. I mean, yes, it's sensitive because it is their final words, but again, it conveys sort of both the horror and nobility of their death in one fell swoop.
I think it was fitting in this case, particularly because as an editor, you're probably going to think, well, what would the family feel about something that's said or some reaction? In this case, it was so professional, it was harrowing, but I would imagine the family would just feel that that was a perfectly natural thing to do. And that wouldn't bother me in that sense here, and certainly contributed amazingly to the story.
I have to say, I listened to the raw dispatch. I hadn't intended to listen to all of it because we were directed to a certain point of it. And then I found myself just listening, and I'm getting more and more upset. So I listened to this, from two places, from a journalist perspective, as we are to do here, but also just as a person. So I'm tearing up listening to this. It was very hard to listen to. Then I read all the comments, responding to the raw data, and a lot of them were aimed at us. Like, what about you people? Can you just give the family a minute? If you had to play it, can you play it 2 days from now? Can you just wait a minute? I thought about that. So my answer is, if it is viable to new information in the story, and in this case, I think what each of you have said, I think it was extremely hard for me to listen to. I am totally empathetic with the family. I do the old trick that we were taught as young journalists, put yourself in the place.
Yes.
Would you want that? And I would want all correct information to be out there. And what you saw between the dispatcher and those men was very professional. And we also saw how fast something can turn, because that was new information that was underscored by what people had thought had happened, to your point about trying to knock down speculation. But that was then you were able to hear
that personal standard that you spoke of is something that I applied, and I viscerally felt that it was too sensitive to use the firefighters' voices. We had a discussion about that in the newsroom, and we tried to balance sensitivity to the firefighters' families and the extended families of firefighters, our audience in general, people such as myself and other listeners. By the way, we had an email before this segment from a viewer in Medway who says the news media should not release those words. They should be cherished by his family and fellow firefighters and remain private. Just feels like an invasion of privacy, etc.
Let me say this.
Sure.
This is my concern. Now will they be played over and over and over again? That's where, I get very upset about it, because not everybody has judgment, frankly, and it becomes just a piece of data that's just thrown out there to talk about the story. That's what I want to say.
Just one more point. This conversation would be going, I think, very differently if what the firefighters had to say in their last moments was different. If you imagine, hypothetically, and I want to stress this is hypothetical, if you imagine less professionalism being displayed, maybe frustration with the orders they were getting from the people at BPD who were dictating where they went or weren't going, frustration with the support they were receiving, that would raise questions about the way this fire was responded to, about maybe the necessity of their deaths. Then you'd be confronted with, I think, a related but a separate set of questions. Do we broadcast audio of people who are upset or angry or are suggesting that maybe they didn't get the help they needed? That's not what happened here. But
I would argue with you that even in the hypothetical situation, now you have something of a legal issue more than just a pure, what are the ethical considerations, if any?
Reason to broadcast?
Yes,
more reason to broadcast?
Yeah, or less, because that might encroach upon some legal issues. This is just pure. There's nothing there except, their last words. Do we have the right as journalists to air their last words in a moment, before they die?
Of exemplary conduct.
Right, exactly. Right. So I think it still is a question.
And then the issue would be, if WBZ and other mainstream media don't broadcast, it's still going to be available. Somebody's going to put it out there, and then that's the question.
And I just urged and hope that it just is not used over and over and over again. I hope, now, we've heard it, let's leave it alone.
And I think you made an important point, Roy, which is we don't know how the families feel about this, but it's very difficult to believe that they would be bothered by this. I think it was showing off their families at their best in their final moments.
There will always be these tough calls, and I think, as we said today in the newsroom, you have to decide them on a case-by-case basis. You can't make a blanket statement about whether or not it's appropriate to use scanner audio.
One way to find out if the family would be okay with it is to contact the family. I don't think we have any idea if any organizations did.